Charles, welcome back.
Welcome back, sir.
Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
I'm not a father, but
as far as you know.
Well, Charles, so much going on.
Oh, man, it was a busy week for you as well.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Of course, the IG report is out, and it continues to stir controversy.
It does indeed, and we'll get into some of the details. And they're actually, like anything else, if you have a 568-page document, it's going to have some things that will disappoint and other things that will please. But we've saved some morsels of excellent news for the crowd today, and we're going to break it after we talk about the artwork here, which once again, I mean, how you do all this stuff is beyond me. How you get it done so well and so quickly. This picture is really something else. Of course, this is a takeoff on the play 12 Angry Men.
Yep.
13 Angry Dems. We start with the picture of Trump. It's like, okay, you want to mess with me? All right, we'll see who's going to win. Now, those were in his swelter days. I think the 510 days in the White House have had a little bit of an impact on his
He's a little
physique.
too fond of Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think.
I love Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Really?
Oh, I really do.
Oh, my God.
It's fantastic stuff. But anyway, you look at these pictures here, and I mean, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. I mean, what do we want to, do we think today is a pleasant Father's Day for Bill Clinton, given what has happened in the last little while with his infamous book tour and all the things that he said that are so objectionable and so wrong?
He's so out of his mind. And Charles, just the other day, I interviewed Juanita Broderick, and she informed me of something I had no idea about. He told her that he was sterile from having the mumps when he was a kid.
It's a miracle then.
Well, I mean, so how do we explain Howdy Doody?
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. God works
Web
in mysterious
Hubble.
ways. But you look at this crew, and of course, the people are going to react negatively. They're going to say, well, James Comey is not a Democrat. I don't think so. I mean,
yeah.
I think, the notion that the head of the FBI, that the rules would permit the head of the FBI to have his wife actively campaigning for Hillary Clinton, as well as 4 daughters, I just don't think that should be allowed.
Certainly not.
Within the FBI. Because it's one thing to say, well, James Comey can compartmentalize the fact that if his wife is ardently trying to get Hillary elected, his daughters are all ardently trying, and that if he does something to upset the apple cart and make it so that Hillary's, let's just say, foundation isn't investigated the way it should have been, and then also maybe, let's just say, decides to tilt the investigation against Trump. I mean, come on, you cannot, if the rules allow what James Comey's wife and daughters did, those rules need to be changed for the FBI.
Of course. I mean, I thought the Hatch Act is supposed to prevent the people in the FBI from being politicized at all, and you've got them campaigning for Hillary, campaigning for their own wives. In the case of Andrew McCabe, it's pretty absurd.
It is ridiculous. And of course, you have, Barack Obama. Now, we've been going light on Barack Obama, but we're about to change that because there have been some recent developments, and he's been getting cut a lot of slack. I mean, the nerve when he was president, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, you go on and on and on. And the mainstream media, fake yapper at CNN, and these guys, let him get away with the idea that it was a scandal-free 8 years.
They love that.
It's ridiculous. And then we don't even know, frankly, where Barack Obama's presidential records are. We don't know where they are.
The president's records are missing.
President Obama's records are missing, exactly. Just like I would guess President W. Bush's, some of those are likely missing, and certainly Bubba's records. Who knows?
Pants are missing.
Well, we shouldn't be so rough on him on Father's Day. Maybe we should actually.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of fathers' lives quite miserable. The fathers of the daughters that he's gone after.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then Rod Rosenstein, they say he's a Republican. Again, same story. His wife worked in the Clinton White House. When you get involved in these couples that are really, the issue isn't partisanship, it's being members of the uniparty, the established wings in both parties that want to pit ordinary Americans against one another to have these conflicts, to preserve the arguments for their own staying on top of the levers of power. That's what this is all about. It's not, bipartisanship. No, the problem we have is it's one party, right? And they're just, as far as I'm concerned, the lesson from 2015 and 16 is, why did Democrats even bother with primaries? They're the tree huggers. Why didn't they just say, look, we rigged it?
Well, they did, essentially. In the lawsuit that Jared and Elizabeth Beck brought, they said, the Democrats said, we don't have to choose the candidate that actually gets elected. We could pick whoever we want.
Yeah, that's not rigging or collusion, right? But then you go down the list here. I love the way the pictures get smaller and smaller. You got McCabe, who, that man, what we know about him so far, how he actually got into the FBI in the first place is a scary concept. How did that man, actually pass whatever exams may exist? And I appreciate, it's quite possible that criminals would look at the FBI and say, the perfect place to me to work is in the FBI.
Right.
So I have no doubt that there are criminals trying to get inside the FBI to bypass and game the different rules and then find out what the FBI may know about their, no doubt about that. But this is a man who actually was acting director of the FBI under Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And how did that happen, so to speak? And then, Valerie Jarrett, I mean, how did she get a security clearance, given her long years of involvement in one of the most corrupt cities on earth, not just the United States of America, Chicago, with highly questionable characters? How did she survive a security search? Who did that search? Was it McCabe? I mean,
probably.
It's just ridiculous. And Nancy Pelosi, I mean, who was the guy who retired from boxing gracefully? Was it Muhammad Ali or was it Joe Frazier? One of them retired gracefully. This is somebody who is still in politics, but also decided at the age of plus 65, let's say, to become a boxer and get her head punched out every day. She's making no sense whatsoever. A word to the wise Democrats who may be watching this: you're doing us a favor so long as you keep her in. This is going to make it easier and easier. You could say, Nancy Pelosi's vision of the world, and then just cut to pictures of San Francisco, where she has one of her mansions, or her home, which was Baltimore. Long ago, she was raised, I believe, in Baltimore. Her father was a famous politician there. Then you got this guy Brennan.
Yeah.
And the nerve of this guy. Can you imagine if Bush's CIA director had started threatening? There wasn't Twitter, I don't think, back then.
No.
Had started threatening Barack. Oh yeah, there was Twitter in January 2009. It started threatening Barack Obama, saying, "You better watch out. I'm going to get you." The former CIA guy saying that about Donald Trump on Twitter, and Trump's just saying, "Oh, okay, I'm not." This guy, his whole track record really needs to be re-examined. How he got involved in the CIA, how he worked his way up. Remember what happened? Petraeus was, unceremoniously bounced, and Brennan was his replacement. Okay?
Right.
So maybe there's more in that Petraeus timeline. Why was Petraeus bounced exactly? What standards were used to go after Petraeus? What if you applied the Petraeus standards to Brennan, the Petraeus standards to McCabe, to Comey, okay? And certainly to Strzok and Page. I mean, Petraeus made the mistake of, allowing his mistress to be in the same place where his schedule was on a computer. Strzok and Page, we still don't know how many texts went back and forth. And as for Hillary, and Uma and all these people with on Her Majesty's Secret Service, we're going to talk about that. How many, if you apply the Petraeus standard to these people, none of these people would be anywhere close to celebrating freedom. They'd be in with Manafort, awaiting trial in jail.
You also just thought of the next episode, Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Have we not done that?
No, we don't do that.
But then you keep going. You got Schumer. I mean, who wouldn't love that face? This guy is just angry. You could say to him, Chuck, you shouldn't call yourself Chuck, first of all. But Chuck, Donald Trump has decided to reward you, and we're giving everybody in New York State $1 billion. And he goes, "Oh, the inequality, it's widening. I can't cope with it." You know? And speaking of inequality, here we have George Soros, how this man has escaped prison, not simply in the United States, but in multiple countries around the world. We not only has destabilized the country, but he's also set himself to profit, most likely not paying taxes in the local country, which can be lawful depending on how you set it up. And then you have Chelsea, and we've given you Chelsea. At this point, I have no compunction, no reservation at all. Saying that if you're going to go out into the public domain now, no longer do you have immunity to say the kind of outrageous things you say. For example, recently that Donald Trump doesn't speak for America, but you, howdy doody, do. I mean, come on, there's no way. And last but not least, this Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the whole Awan brothers, Awan family scandal that you've been exposing. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz worked with the Clinton interests to rig the 2015-16 primary season. I hope she didn't know the true state of the Clinton Foundation, but she certainly knew the true state of the congressional secrecy scandal that she and so many of her colleagues certainly were not protecting. They were mishandling classified information by employing the Awan brothers. So you look at this team, it's a motley crew, and unfortunately this crew has a deep bench of even motlier crew people, which we left off the poster. But we will be talking about, do you want to be in the lying, scheming, fraudster wing of the Democratic Party, or do you want to think about maybe a purge? It's time for a purge. All of these people need to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
To jail, many of them.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Charles.
Which is why they're angry, because they're going to jail.
They're going to be angry pretty soon when they find themselves behind bars wearing orange clothing.
Yeah. So this is a special, this is a special Father's Day show, which is why we've been so lenient on the Clintons. But, and the way we do these slides is we work them up, we try to get right up to the minute, unlike cable news and the mainstream shows. We have the ability to produce these at a certain time and get
minutes before.
Right. And so I didn't know, however, because I was working on this, I didn't know some of the recent things that, in fact, top a Drudge right now is a story that Rudy Giuliani is saying it's time to investigate the investigators. And I swear I didn't coordinate that with him. But the good news, there's some really good news I'm going to get to in a few minutes. I know I'm teasing like Hannity here, but there is some excellent news revealed in that report, which is going to pile drive Mueller and the people supporting Mueller and the whole team into the slammer.
Yeah? Pile drive
them. You watch this. And so one thing that does leap out at me through all this is the number of people currently involved attacking Trump or connected to the attack on Trump. The number of those people who are directly tied into the Enron task force, which was supervised by Robert Mueller, is stunning. Which makes me think Ray was on it. We'll get to a bunch of the names, but it tells me that the crux of this problem here may well be we don't truly yet know what actually happened with Enron. I think the Enron scandal, there's no question that when you look at Enron, I think it needs to be re-examined, and of course I will be doing that.
Nice.
Inshallah. Is that the Enron scandal most likely, almost certainly implicates the Bush wing of the Republican Party. It likely implicates Bill Clinton and many others. It centrally involves India. It may,
Enron involves
absolutely.
India?
One of the implosions in Enron was this crooked deal they tried to do in India that blew up, literally blew up. And it was a power deal.
The factory blew up?
No, but just the whole deal blew up in everybody's face. And it created intense financial strain at Enron. And that deal, and there are many links between and among these parties and McKinsey, which we've talked about in the past. So I think to really understand, and the Clintons are expert at this, and the Obamas are trying to become expert, and the Bushes, I don't know what they're doing exactly, but they're expert at getting you to look not at the real problem, but to get distracted over here, follow the shiny rabbit over here into the woods.
Right.
That's what they like you to do. Hence the Russian collusion, hence all this stuff. Instead of focusing on, the endemic corruption, which, and here's the nugget I'm going to begin to tease some of it out. The FBI is investigating the heart of this problem, and that's what we learned.
Right.
One of the key things that we learned. So if we go to the next page, disclaimer I'll do very quickly, but we go over it at the beginning of each show for a reason, and that is because the United States of America is great for many reasons. One of them is Jason and I and others here in America have a First Amendment right to express our views, and that's what we're doing on the show. But we're not just spouting off. We do a lot of research. We try to have themes that recur through our presentations, and we give you, the viewership, a chance to actually test us and look and see what we found. And we are getting, Jason, I spare you the number of emails that I get because I'm now getting a large number of very helpful emails. Thank you to our viewers, especially. I'll only give first names because they've asked to be quiet, but to Kevin and Bob, who are two very expert accountants, have been sending me a constant deluge of new information that I think strengthens the case that we've already been able to make. So thank you to each of you. This is the playlist, and I don't know how many other people, how many other teams are putting out this type of work. Jason, you do well beyond what we do together. You're doing even more than this, but I don't know of many teams that are consistently putting out 2 long shows with facts, keeping up with the news. And it will be fun at some point to go back and figure out, we're not trying to take credit for being the first, but stuff that we're talking about here and have been talking about weeks and even months ago is only now coming into the public domain via the established media.
Right.
So those with time, in particular you investigators who are beginning to tuck into this in new countries around the world, dare I suggest, one place that would be an interesting country to look at this is Saudi Arabia.
Ooh.
If you want your money back, you have a lot of money out there, but you also have a lot of young people. The rumor is that Saudi Arabia has given at least 10 to 25 million to the Clinton Foundation. Get your people, they need things to do. Look at Sunday with Charles videos from the beginning to the end, and you will get a quick path on how you can get your money back. Same in Norway, same in Australia, same in France, same in the UK, and then same in all these states. These, this Clinton Foundation set of frauds, and it is a massive set of frauds, has cost taxpayers at federal level hundreds of millions of dollars, and at state level lots of money. And you have a chance now in the IRS, Department of Justice, our federal government, these states, 4 countries, to get your money back. So with that, we can go into the third slide. And I'm mindful of the time, Jason, I'm watching carefully.
Sure.
All right, so we have dueling narratives. Okay, before we get into the substance of any of this, the reveal that is the big piece of news is that the FBI in fact opened an investigation in January of 2016 into the Clinton Foundation. That is massive, because to open an FBI investigation, as we'll get into it, there's a process we'll be talking about in some more depth. When you go through actually the initial stages of, you complain to the FBI, and the FBI will say, yeah, I get a lot of complaints, should I look into this? And then they say, well, all right, we'll look into it.
Quit
we
complaining.
we stop complaining, man up. What's a little, anyway. But when it gets to the level of quote, investigation, there's different types of investigations. There's a preliminary investigation, there's a more advanced, and then there's an intensive investigation. So the good news is that when the FBI does, and this is all from publicly available information, when the FBI does decide to go and open an investigation, there are extensive records that the FBI people, Christopher Wray and others, would have access to as to what really happened with this investigation. Okay, so the big thing here, and what's going to pile drive Mueller and his people out of existence, is to compare the period. First ask the question, why did it take so long to open this investigation in January 2016? Why didn't you open it in, let's say, May, or even on March 16th, 2015, when some journalist wrote a piece about how come the IRS isn't investigating the Clinton Foundation? Why did it take till January of 2016, and what diddling and dallying did you do on whose orders in that time frame? Okay,
right.
And then after January 2016, who did what to whom? I mean, did you just announce an investigation and you get those, those hamsters who are running in place, and connect it to a piece of string and nothing happens, and you can say, yeah, I got an investigation. Hear that sound? They're running.
The question of who did what to whom is being asked and answered by Bill Clinton in terms of what you can do to people against their will. He's testing the limits of that. That's crazy.
That's horrible. But thanks for that, Jason. So if we go back into the slide there, there's two narratives going on now. On the one hand, we have the Horowitz report, and on the other hand, we have the New York Attorney General actions. You can keep that up. New York Attorney General actions against the Trump Foundation on Thursday at 9:58 in the morning, just before. Yeah. So we're going to cover each of them, but Andy McCarthy, who really, if you're going to listen to anybody about the state of the Justice Department and how things work in the Justice Department, one really needs to listen to Andy McCarthy. I mean, he's very thorough, fair-minded, able lawyer who worked in government, in the Justice Department, or in and around the Justice Department, and his headline is really my big takeaway from the Horowitz report. There is no doubt that the Justice Department, the FBI, after 8 long Obama years, and before that 8 George W. Bush years, and before that 8 Clinton years, and you can throw in HW, the FBI and the Department of Justice have some serious problems at I think the senior leadership level.
Yeah.
That these people who found themselves in power began to think that they were above the law, that they were exalted, that they could go from lily pad to lily pad above all these problems, and that they could bring politicians and others to heel by the enormous power they have deciding to prosecute or not to prosecute. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be brought way back into balance. We have just too many showboating Comeys, showboating McCabe's, showboating Pages. They can't be. There needs to be precedent set and markers laid down that when you behave the way these people behaved, thinking that you're going to rig an election and then you're going to topple a president, and now even today Mueller thinking that you can intimidate people, that is just not right. And we need to go back over this long period of time, expose to the public what truly happened, and then hold these people accountable. A lot of these people are very rich today.
Pile drive them right into jail.
Into jail. So McCarthy's piece is well worth reading. This True Pundit piece that came out, this is hysterical. I mean, it's sad, actually, right? Remember we're going to get into this in some depth a little bit later, but the FBI apparently, when they found, they left Hillary's devices alone, Uma Abedin and Weiner, because they feared too many crimes would be found. What is this? On the one hand, you have, over here, we've got the Sarnea brothers, right? Russia says you ought to check these dudes out, they're bad actors. You go check them out and you say, hey, they're fine. It's great. And then Boston happens, right? Now, mistakes like that happen. But on the other hand, now you find this laptop. Everyone's been saying, Donald Trump's been asking Putin for the missing emails. Here they are. They're on a laptop. And what do you say? You say, you know what? Why would I look at that? I don't want to do that.
This is actually one of the greatest headlines ever, the notion that the Clintons are doing too many crimes for the FBI to even contemplate.
That's going to clog up our system for like decades. We can't do that, right? We just
many
got to let them
crimes.
out.
That's the solution. If you're going to do crime, just do it in bulk.
Yeah, make her head of the UN, right? And then Bill O'Reilly's back writing for Real Clear Politics, and I think he also has his, and he's talking about here there's incredible bias. And I think when I look at this report, and I haven't really read carefully enough every page of the report, what strikes me is there's a dissonance or a conflict between the executive summary and the support. The executive summary waters down the conclusion about there's no bias. Then you look and say, well, there's another instance of bias, and another, and another, and another in the supporting detail. So I think what happened with this Horowitz report is the editing was interrupted. I think I'd love to see the original near final version and to see the one that was first provided, and then look at the difference between that and then what the public now has. And I hope, I don't think we need to give any help to the able teams of senators and Congress people who are going to be interviewing Horowitz and Christopher Wray and others this coming week. But we really need to see the whole picture. And on this point, I would just caution that there's some very important statements in the run-up and the explanation of this report, one of which is that sensitive law enforcement related material is purposefully left out of key chapters, meaning there are active investigations, the FBI and others, the Clinton Foundation and other investigations. This report doesn't go into that zone because it doesn't want to compromise those investigations. The second thing is that there are classified appendices that we can't see, you and I, yet. So I think when you just take at face value what we've seen so far and what we'll get into in a bit, and you always remember there is an FBI investigation into the Clinton Foundation ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay, when you remember that, and you remember that in order to understand the email investigation, these other investigations, you also have to see what was going on at the Clinton Foundation. The Clintons are very good at saying, okay, we got a super problem, we're going to tell the public, okay, it's Travelgate and it's Whitewater, and those are different than me going after Juanita Broaddrick. So I can't talk to you about all three of them. I'll only talk to you about one of them. And I only do that after the statute of limitations has passed, because then I know I'll be out of trouble. Or after I put Lois Lerner into the IRS to make sure that nothing will happen with the Clinton Foundation. So if we go back into the slides quickly.
I feel like we're definitely learning a lot about the process of how all this stuff unravels. Anyway, sorry.
So if we look at this, we don't have to pull it up here, but this Daily Caller story is all about multiple people in the FBI, agents, getting benefits from reporters from the media. I mean,
friends with benefits.
You can't do this. I mean, I can't imagine. I'll give you one vignette. I was down on a beach vacation, and I was coming back, and I didn't have a wallet, so I put my cash in my passport, right? And I wasn't thinking, I didn't have a lot of cash, several $100 bills or whatever, but I just put it for convenience, and I forgot the money was in my wallet, and I handed it to the customs agent.
Oh.
And they looked at me and said, what do you think you're doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. He said, what's this money? Are you trying to bribe me with this money? I said, no, that's where I keep my money. It's in my passport. But how you could go here, and with, of course, it's the fake news that is burying this, that multiple FBI agents were taking items of value from reporters in terms of meals and trips and handouts and stuff like that. They had tickets. You can't, I mean, that the media would even think about, the failing mainstream media would even let these people do this type of stuff is beyond me. But that the agents would sit there and say, oh yeah, sure, I'll take it. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really bad stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
If we go back in. So yeah, we don't have to hit both of these. If you hit the second one, this is really something. Okay, so I was struck by this. I happened to be in Washington, D.C. I seldom go there, but I was down there the day that they announced they were reopening the the Hillary Clinton investigation over the Weiner.
It must have been like Christmas for you.
It was fantastic. It was a beautiful thing. One of my brothers called me up actually and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Right away, get used to saying the words President Trump, because that's happening." But anyway, what happened is the news started to leak out by, I think, September 29th or so, that the New York City police had found this laptop and that there was a lot of incriminating evidence in the laptop. And then the FBI swooped in, I think is the timeline, and took control of the laptop. But instead of bringing it into Washington, D.C., they kept it in New York. There's a lot of stuff in this report here and subsequent analysis about how, instead of going rapidly through it initially, they just kept it in the New York office, and people said, "Oh, we can't study this. Looks like there's classified information.
Too much crime on this."
And they can't.
To look at.
They weren't classified to see it, so they didn't have the authority to see this, so they couldn't do it. But instead of immediately going initially and saying, well, we got a huge problem. Everybody's been looking for these missing emails. Trump's been talking about the missing emails. Trump's been joking about them. Now it looks like we may have them. This analysis here, which is not, I haven't vetted it, but it's plausible to me, is that Peter Strzok said, all right, there could be a lot of duplicate emails on this. So there's 675,000 emails maybe. I'll figure out how to de-duplicate.
Yeah, he's like, I'll delete all the extra ones.
Yeah, the ones that are, Hillary did. I know how to use BleachBit. No.
So
but anyway,
funny.
so that you would let Peter Strzok anywhere near this mess at this point, and that the FBI has not yet, and I hope they have, exhaustively examined all. These are the missing Clinton Foundation emails, and I'll tell you why. That more than likely, there are going to be emails in that pile that will reference, there'll be replies to previous emails, and you'll be able to put out of these 675,000 emails, isolate any that have anything to do with a Clinton Foundation donor, or a Clinton Foundation employee, a Clinton Foundation trustee, the Clintons themselves, or any of these Clinton charities. And this is going to be the stuff that was, remember Hillary swore, because you can trust that lady, she swore that she had turned over all work-related emails, right?
Right.
So what is her definition of a work-related email? That's an email involving legitimate and lawful work that she did while Secretary of State. I can't give you all the emails that dealt with my illegal work, right? I'm just guessing now. But I mean, the 675,000 emails, this is a massive story, right? So what's happened, again, you don't have to pull this up, I'll just talk about it. Very suspicious to me the way the news flow worked the day of the release. At 9:58 in the morning, we had we had an announcement that this acting attorney general was going to go after the Trump Foundation.
Right.
Then this fellow, in case you haven't seen, this is I call people like this scruffies. This is a prototypical scruffy. Who was he married to? Anita Dunn, right? Who was using an email alias when she shouldn't have been, and she had to resign. This is Anita Dunn's husband. Okay. This guy was the White House counsel under Barack Obama, who, when he abruptly resigned, let's just say, and then he went to work for where? Perkins Coie, the law firm centrally involved, I would argue, in rigging the 2015-16 Democratic primaries. He's senior partner there. Okay, now he's just resigned recently in the last month or so to be a professor at NYU Law School. And he gets this article written, if you go to the next slide.
This one?
Well, actually, hit this one actually, the above the law. He's replaced first by Kathy Rumler. Who's Kathy Rumler? She was on the Enron task force as well.
Oh boy.
All right. So this is Bob Barr's replacement as White House counsel under Obama in 2011 was this lady Kathy Rumler. He goes back to Perkins Coie. Okay. And I must say, this is a kind of catty thing to talk about. She's famous for her role as the lead prosecutrix in the Enron fraud case and for her fabulous footwear. It's like, ugh. Anyway, if we go to the next slide. Yeah. If we could go to the next slide, Jason.
Let's hear more about her shoes.
In the Atlantic here, somehow Bauer manages to get a piece in on Friday.
Wow.
The disastrous legal implications of this assault against the Trump Foundation. Okay? Now, Bob Bauer, I disagree with his politics. I believe he's probably pretty smart. This article is idiotic. It is idiotic. And,
why is that?
Well, he's trying to say, they're in big trouble now. They already announced they're going to dissolve this foundation, and now the New York Attorney General has moved against this foundation. This is a tiny, it's a lot of money to most people, but in terms of the Clinton Foundation, in terms of the Gates Foundation, in terms of the frauds that we've been talking about now for 82 shows, this is nothing. And to put it in perspective, it's like 18 million went into it and 19 million went out of it or something like that. And to put that in perspective, Bill and Hillary Clinton's payments from Laureate Education of 17.6 million. to this day, have still not been explained as they need to be on multiple years of reports to the IRS for multiple of their charities and to multiple state and foreign tax filings as well. They haven't explained any of this, that Bill Clinton would serve as, we've talked about in the past, part-time chancellor of a fake university that was not registered properly in New York or any of the states, and that he would do this in a 50-50 deal between the Clinton Global Initiative, which didn't legally exist, and a for-profit entity without filing any of the paperwork, and with all that, pocket $17.6 million for himself and for Hillary, while Hillary at first was the Secretary of State and promoting laureate around the world.
Sounds fine.
You're going to make an issue of the Trump Foundation, where they're taking predominantly their own money and making mistakes perhaps in the way they filed reports, but not getting rich off of a foundation. Theirs is a private foundation, the Trump's thing. Hillary's and Bill's was supposed to be operated in the public interest, but instead of doing it that way, they said, those pesky laws, we gave, we took a huge, victory laps all over the world, for our philanthropy and stuff like that, and we took your stuff, your records that are the property of the people of the United States, we put them into this building, which we pretended cost $165 million, which really cost about $90 million. We stole money, we committed bank fraud, we committed wire fraud, and then on top of that, after making representations to the National Archives that we would forever be, the Clinton Foundation, a public charity and not controlled by family, in the dead of night, what we decided to do, without telling you in New York, where we did this, we decided to concentrate control of the main Clinton Foundation in the hands of ourselves, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton, on the 2nd of November 2013, and then to hide it from you until June 27th, 2017. Okay?
Who better?
That's what we do, right? And you're going to make an issue of somebody screwing up, Bob Bauer, a foundation, when your buddy Barack Obama is going to go down in flames. I warned their people. I took them chapter and verse through what they had to do. I've checked the filings in New York. They have not listened to me. Fair warning. Okay, you're not going down a track of taking $200 million from the Illinois taxpayer to stuff it into a fraud. You're not getting away with that. So if we go back into the slide here, then we have this, frankly, he's a Pulitzer Prize winner, David K. Johnson. He happens to be the same journalist who received Donald Trump's missing taxes for 2005. Okay, and here, this is David K. Johnson trying to stir the pot that's saying that the Attorney General of New York can't really do anything. The law doesn't work that way. Wrong, David. We're going to show you how wrong you are in just a second. But the set of issues that are alleged in the attack against the Trump family, you could mark the complaint up, take out the words Trump, and then just substitute Clinton. And you would be talking about a complaint which would have, the Clinton complaint has absolute rock solid merit. I don't know the details of the Trump Foundation allegations. I don't focus on small frauds. I focus on very large frauds. I may take the time to go look at the Trump case.
Would be fair to do that.
I may do that. It's possible. But the point is, I could say right away, and over here we have $2.3 billion of minimum fraudulent activity in the Clinton Foundation. Over here we have 19 million. 2.3 billion is bigger than 19 million. And I mean, arguably the Clinton Foundation commits, in its run rate, $20 million of fraud per month, $1 million a day.
Wow.
Right? So this, I don't know, as I say, I don't know the specifics. I doubt the specifics will turn out to be as alleged by the acting Attorney General, that there were no controls, nobody knew what was going on with the foundation, exceeded its authorized purposes. Does that sound familiar? No controls, exceeded the authorized. It seems to be like this is a stunt designed to pre-butt what's going to come out soon as a result of the long-running FBI investigation into real frauds.
Right.
So thanks for doing this, Acting Attorney General. We'll go to the next page. Because remember, my policy here is that to make it easier for people who don't like numbers, green is good and red is bad. A lot of red on this page, okay? I have not tried to put all of the charities that I found. These are just some of the American charities that I believe are far worse position than Donald Trump's charity. These are the dates they were formed. For those attorneys general who want to look into this, these are the employer identification numbers. If you go into the New York State Charity Bureau website, which we've showcased in the past many times, which we'll do again in a minute, you can punch in any of those EINs, FEINs, and then you will get all the papers that are on file. And then you simply do what I do. You say, all right, what is the law and what do the regulations say about what should be on file, and what have these idiots filed? And you'll see that they didn't comply with the law. And so you want to go down a track of attacking Donald Trump Foundation, you've got to go and look into all of these. And we've laid pathways for most of them already out there for you. There is a passel of fraud. There is a long-standing pattern and practice of fraudulent activity in the guise of charity involving each of these operations and other allied operations inside and outside the United States. Now, here we have this recent story in Fox News. I didn't notice it actually when it came out. I don't think. But this idea, or maybe we did talk about it, this idea that Barack Obama can use his presidential foundation that's not in theory going to hold any records, which you can't do that, to create a whole bunch of mini-me Barack Obamas who are going to take over and tilt the world to the left. That is not a charitable activity. That is a proto-political party. That's a religious cult. And I'm sorry, this is not going to happen the way Barack Obama thinks it's going to happen. And they would be very wise to stand down. And either, if they want to do this type of thing, they need to shut down, which is what I advise them to do, shut down the Presidential Records Foundation, take your lumps on that one, decide whether or not you want to do it. If you do want to do it properly. But don't mix a pure charity with a crooked political operation. Don't do that, because you will not get that job done, even and especially in Chicago. So if we go to the next page, next slide actually. All right, we're not going to read even a few of these, too many of these words, but if you want to see where the laws and the regulations are, this link takes you to the laws. Don't hit it, Jason. And this to the regulations. Okay, the laws are confusing in New York. They say the Attorney General can revoke, suspend, or deny registration, or they can even deny or revoke a claim of tax exemption. It says in Section 2. But then in Section 4 of the same law, it says the administrative remedies provided by this article shall not be applicable to any violation of this article. Which, we're going to say we can do all this thing, but then there's this fine print that says, it doesn't matter. But if you look at the regulations make it clear that they supersede this or expand upon this law. They can. The New York Attorney General absolutely could go against all 12 of those charities that I mentioned previously. And if we just go back a page, actually, if you haven't figured this out yet, the Clinton Family Foundation, set up December 4th, 2001, okay, that did not get tax exemption until 2002, but the Clinton family nonetheless took a tax deduction for their contribution between the 4th of December 2001 and year-end 2001 in the taxable year for 2001, from memory of $700,000. This thing is a complete fraud, because this thing has not been organized and operated lawfully, and more importantly, has donated lots of money, taking credit for it, to various Clinton foundations. There's the Bill Hillary Chelsea Clinton Foundation, which people know about. Then there's this other thing headquartered in Chappaqua, the Clinton Family Foundation, which is a private foundation.
And they're just donating money to each other?
Well, what they're doing is they make a donation to the Clinton Family Foundation and take a tax deduction for that. And then that money sits in the foundation, and then in a later period, the foundation gives that money to various causes. But the issue for the Clinton Family Foundation that I see is that for many, many years it gave money to illegally organized and operated related charities without teasing out these relationships and without explaining that the Clintons themselves were benefiting personally from the activities of these various foundations. So this is an enormous sewer, in my judgment, and it's a serious set of problems because sometimes it's Bill and sometimes it's Hillary, but they have their signatures on the tax forms that are sent across state lines into the tax authorities.
Under penalty of perjury.
You got it. So this is one most people haven't studied, and the Clintons love to have things that are confusing, all wrapped around the same mess. Right. But this is very important. The Clinton Family Foundation, over time, may have gotten itself into far bigger trouble than the Trump Foundation, this tiny Clinton Family Foundation. If we keep going, the regulations make it clear, as I was saying, that the Attorney General could go against all these different foundations, including the Trump Foundation. So it is a serious matter. If we go to the next page. But there are some federal laws that one needs to really think about. Okay, when we put, again, I'm not a lawyer, but reading through the material that's out there, 18 U.S.C. Section 219, if you work in government, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State or Senator, you cannot act as an agent of a foreign principal. You can't do it. Each time you do it, you're fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 2 years on each count. So if you're operating, and this is why I think the Horowitz report is not as good as it should be, if the real game was to set up a slush fund where people who wanted to get favors out of our government through Hillary Clinton, whether they're Americans trying to get favors for help abroad or foreigners trying to get help, not getting attacked or maybe getting supported by the U.S. Treasury, you go over to these various Clinton charities and allied investment funds run by Mark Masvinsky and others, and you give those entities money, and suddenly you're in the clear. Either you get money out of, let's say, OPIC or some other thing, World Bank over which we have influence, or you don't get a tax prosecution, you don't get the Justice Department going after you, you don't get, you name it. So the question of what the Clinton Foundation was actually doing, to date we still do not know, even though the three Musketeers, Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein, spent 4 years looking at this thing when it was obviously a fraud, when the papers that are out there show that they did not use an audit. They found a firm that wasn't even registered to be an auditor in Arkansas until March 17th, 2003. But they got papers, fake audit papers out of them, which of course they hide from the public. And you got this vaunted guy, Rosenstein, supposedly a smart guy. Comey, a smart guy, supposedly. Mueller. They don't see any of this fraud.
And they're using fake auditors. I mean, that's crazy.
Fake auditors. Who knows? Maybe the lawyers they were using are not even, entitled to practice law. But the point is that in order to see why there was a secret server, you have to investigate this. You have to see that by the time Hillary Clinton was, decided to run for president, which was a long time ago, but in earnest, by January of 2007, the Clinton Foundation was in an epic state of distress. They absolutely had to make sure that Lois Lerner would sit on top of the problems and not refer them for prosecution, and then they had to fight like hell to hope that Hillary would become president so they could bury these problems once and for all. And of course, that didn't happen. So you need to understand what was going on here. And then we need, this 14th Amendment leaps out at me. Jason, you and I, we live here in New Yorkistan, right? We're not going to get treated the same way that the Clintons get treated. You see this. I mean, right. Here it suits. They need a distraction from the I.G. Horowitz report. Who knows who dialed up this acting attorney general and said, go after the Trump Foundation. That'll make headlines nonstop. We'll leak it all over the place. It'll devour the news cycle, overwhelm the Horowitz report. That's not the way it works for Republicans. In this state, there is no equal protection under the law. That is absolutely clear, and it should be a constitutional issue that needs to be addressed by powerful lawyers. Now, offsetting that, there's a bit of good news. One of my favorite sections of the United States Code is the frauds and swindles section, But if we hit this link here, this Elizabeth Theranos is, Elizabeth Holmes rather, at Theranos. She is in a world of hurt. This came out on Friday. I love these two people. You got a 19-year-old, a woman who dropped out of Stanford at 19 and claimed she had this too good to be true thing and became on paper a billionaire, hooks up in business with her chief operating officer who has a nickname. It's Ramesh Sunny Balwani. And these two managed to hoodwink a lot of very famous people. But the jig is up. You know, the U.S. Attorney's Office has indicted these people.
Didn't they go to Harvard or something?
I think Stanford.
Stanford, oh. But even so, it's like you go to this Ivy League school and
It's not Ivy League.
fancy college, and you're going to start a pharmaceutical company just to hoodwink people?
Well,
swindle,
you see, I think the community of fraudsters is large, and they realize that most people will hear a story that sounds too good to be true, and rather than challenge you on it, if you're introduced by a friend of a friend, or there's you'll say, that sounds pretty interesting. You've got that? Wow. You got George Shultz on your board? Wow. And these frauds, like the Clinton Foundation fraud, dare I say, like the GE fraud, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the natural counter to it is, look, if this had been a problem, you can hear people say, if this had been a problem, somebody would have seen this a long time ago. Would you stop being negative? It's Father's Day, Anyway, well, this woman is and her business partner are going to see a lot of time in prison, in my opinion. So,
due to swindling.
Swindling, exactly. We'll go through this very quickly, but this is an important timeline, okay? I don't know how many people remember this timeline, but the first inkling that there was a problem was March 2nd, 2015, okay? Now, I'm leaving out some of this because there's so many details in here. This is when we learned that Hillary Clinton exclusively used a personal private server, an email account, to handle her Secretary of State business.
Yeah.
Everybody knows around government that it's a risk to send a few emails. You talk to people in government using a personal account and transact government business. There's a risk. I mean, there are processes. If you do that, you better make sure that the personal, if it is a real government record, that somehow that gets into the government file. You don't sit there and say, if it's a bad idea to send a few emails out on my why don't I just send all of them? Because I'm not that important. I'm only the most important government official that's going to handle all of the international interaction around the world for 4 years. I mean, I think what I'll do, because there are no spies, there are no hostile actors outside our borders who might want to compromise our secrets. I think what I'll use is a private email server, and then I won't tell anybody about it. Okay? Jesus. Anyway, I believe, we don't need to put the link up, but I saw this and I had been working and thinking about the Clinton Foundation. I said, instantly, there's a connection between the Clinton Foundation and this scandal. So I wrote, this is one of the early pieces that I wrote for Breitbart, for Steve Bannon actually. And then I also noticed this Teneo thing, which we know we've gone over it ad nauseum, but the Teneo boutique that came out of nowhere and then suddenly starts doing billion-dollar deals all over the world, it gets this big investment, seems to be yet another thing that if you want to get on the right side of the Clintons, looking forward to the day when Hillary Clinton's going to be president for 8 years
Get
in Chelsea.
invested in this.
Yeah, go right in there. Get some Teneo frequent flyer points. So, leaving out a few steps in the chain, we did learn in this Horowitz report, this is explicit on page 446, a private attorney emailed Director Comey to request that the FBI open a public corruption investigation into Hillary Clinton, citing public allegations related to the Clinton Foundation and the use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. We know that Mcauliffe jumped on McCabe, I think it was March 7th. By March 7th, in a separate place in the report, Mcauliffe would say, what, your wife should run for the Senate, Virginia Senate. and he's governor of Virginia at this time. Now, the reason this is important, and I didn't see this in the Horowitz report, is that Terry Mcauliffe is by far and away the most exposed independent director of the Clinton Foundation. He was involved with the Clinton Foundation from, I want to say, as a director, 2000, sometime in 2000, until November 2nd, 2013, or November 5th, I forget exactly, in that time frame. He was the principal independent director. He knows where all the bodies are buried with respect to the foundation. And more than that, he's a longtime fundraiser and friend of the Clintons going way back. He would have known all about what really happened with all these various scandals. And, you know, he has major league exposure over the Clinton Foundation thing, but he's the governor of Virginia. So you have to look and see as we examine this. And there was, I believe, there is an investigation, or at least there was an investigation into Terry Mcauliffe that surfaced. You know, that we don't
FBI investigation?
We don't really know what that's all about yet. But to do justice to the tale of what McCabe was trying to do in this time frame in 2015, between the 4th of May 2015 and January, when the FBI opens the Clinton Foundation investigation, what, if any, role did McCabe and his henchmen have in ensuring that the Clinton Foundation initial inquiry that started on the 4th of May 2015 didn't mature into the type of robust investigation that could have brought the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons down prior to her being nominated in 2016? That's a set of questions that really needs to be pieced together. Because on the 16th of November 2015, the stirring up that I and others have been doing did cause the Clinton Foundation, if you hit this link, Jason, to and I love this, in quotes, fact sheet, you know, that you would put out a passel of lies and characterize them as being fact, you know, and in this way is so awful. You know, that it's amazing to me that the FBI would not have opened an investigation by this date, certainly with the publication on the 16th of November of a passel of misleading lies. Okay, they did not fix the problem. They compounded the problem by refiling these returns. They should have gone all the way back and started with a return for the period October 23, 1997 to December 31st, 1997. They still need to correct to get real audits and correct all of their past filings. Instead, they say, well, we did this, and we've been through this before, but this is false, misleading, disgusting behavior, frankly. And so why did the FBI do anything about it? And there will be a record in the FBI files of, you know, did they notice this or not?
This is not generally accepted accounting principles?
Well, now you're showing off. So if we go back in, so this is another thing. I did not see this. If we hit this link here, I did not see any mention of this in the Horowitz report. Members of the Crowdsource the Truth community, if you could help me out here and look through the Inspector General Horowitz report. Do you see any references in there to, if you go to page 11 of this thing, we've done this before. Okay, is this page 11? It's at the very bottom of the page. Yeah, this is it, We close with the following items. Walk-in Clinton documents. Somebody came in on the 27th of January 2016. All right, walk in, here's the phone number, the email, explained to Ryder, he had sent evidence. Look at what this says. So-and-so explained to Ryder, he had sent evidence of Hillary Clinton's, and then we go to the next page, misuse of classified documents to the FBI director earlier in January 2016. Okay? I don't see any reference to this in the Horowitz report as to when exactly did this stuff go to Comey, and what did Comey do with this material, and did Horowitz bother to ask about this? And the thing that's interesting is that this happened on January 27th, 2016, but it was only written up on February 22nd, 2016. Why the long delay? You know, what was really, he goes in, he or she walks in and says, They have evidence of mishandling, but when he called to confirm receipt, he could not do so, and therefore he wanted to walk in to make sure the information was received by the right people. Right? He gives bona fides. He offers to go, I guess it is a he offers to be interviewed in a skiff to talk at a higher classification level. What was this all about? What evidence did this person suggest was so important that he sent it directly to Comey, and then because he got nothing back out of Dopey James Slippery Comey, he goes in and says, that's it, I'm going in. All right, and that's on the 27th of January, 2016. And what happens 4 days later? 5 days later? McCabe gets promoted to the second most highest position in the FBI, Deputy Director of the FBI. Was it to bottle this up? Was it, this was the proof that would sink Hillary Clinton? This was happening at a time where Bernie was catching fire, where it was a period of primaries where he was getting big crowds, Hillary was getting not so big crowds, Hillary was,
Who would this have been? How many people work at the State Department?
Well, I mean, the great thing is we don't even need to ask the question because the shadow knows, the FBI knows. I mean, they know. They've known for a long time. And so that's why when I say that this is momentous news, the FBI has the ability, they already know, I submit, the full extent of the fraud at the Clinton Foundation. What they don't know, and what is taking them time, as a guess, is there's so many related frauds. And the question is, you're playing against powerful people here, not just to shut the Clinton Foundation and expose those responsible, but all the related contours. You got to get that too. Now, why I say this, we've shown this in the past, but if we hit this link here, thank you, by the way, to the good people at the FBI Vault. I contacted them, and they were kind enough to respond and say, and I think this is not the latest version necessarily, but this is the guide. And if you go into a little, this is the unclassified version of the guide for how they conduct investigations. Excuse me. And if you go into it, I don't know if there's a table of contents. Yeah, keep going. Here, slow. I think if you go to section, from memory it was 11. Could be wrong. No, it's not 11. Well, if we go back, there's one in the sensitive investigations. Yes, here, it's 10. Keep going. Yeah, sensitive investigative matter and sensitive operations review committee, okay? The Clinton Foundation investigation is likely a sensitive investigative matter. So all of these things that are described here would have applied to it. Were policy and procedures followed? As a guess, the reason we're not going to know any of that now, and it's good news, is because the Clinton Foundation is under investigation, and it's very serious, as it should be. We're talking, it's vastly bigger than Corinne Brown. She's in prison for 5 years. Vastly bigger than Stockman. We don't know yet how long he's going to go to prison. And so maybe, and most likely, they did not follow policy and procedure explicitly the way they should have from January 2016 until January 20th, 2017. But at some point after January 20th, 2017, they began not only to follow policy and procedures rigorously going forward, but they went back in and are conducting an exercise into why did this thing get slowed down? And by the way, why was the investigation into the Clinton Foundation that occurred between February of 2001 and sometime in 2005, why did that not see the obvious frauds? I'm very certain that exact analysis is well along in process, and I would not be counting on a lot of free time living in freedom for the 13 angry Dems and various people in the Clinton Foundation, big donors to the Clinton Foundation, trustees of the Clinton Foundation, certainly the accountants and the lawyers. I mean, I think there's a huge tidal wave, tsunami of trouble coming for them.
And Charles, now that we have this FBI guide, we kind of know more about, what has happened so far and what's going on and what will happen next.
Exactly. So if we go to the next page, and I will try to go quickly through this. We've done this in a slightly different way so that you, the viewers, you can download this stuff and read it. It's a lot easier to read some of this stuff, but this is a little technical. I'll try to make it simple. There's a lot of verbiage in the Horowitz report and in public, and Obama used some of this, that in order to tag somebody for mishandling classified information, there had to be intent, okay? And yes, that seems to be true with respect to 18 U.S.C. 793, sections A, B, C, and maybe D and E, but not when you get to section 793F, okay, which there's limited comment on that in this Horowitz report. I may be missing it, but notice how this starts. It says, whoever. It doesn't exclude the President of the United States. It doesn't exclude Valerie Jarrett. It doesn't exclude a senator. It doesn't exclude the head of the FBI. It doesn't exclude Brennan. It says whoever, through gross negligence, permits information to be removed from its proper place of custody or delivered to anyone in violation of his trust, or to be what? Lost, stolen, and the most important element there, abstracted. Abstracted. What Hillary Clinton was doing and her people were doing was they had all of her business on her server, and she was so confident to say that nothing was sent or received,
Right.
marked classified. She always said marked classified. Why? Because they abstracted it. They took the information out of the email and they reconstituted it with the markings off. That's called abstracting. Each instance of that is a serious crime. 10 years in prison per count. Okay? So, not more than 10 years per count. And let's go back, forget about the 500, I love 568-page short reports like that, and those are fun. But let's look at the big picture.
You should do a book on tape of the IG report.
I don't want to put you to sleep faster. But so if you think about this, the big picture is every other Secretary of State recognizing the threats that are posed by hostile actors trying to gain this gold that is the information that a Secretary of State and senior staff will see. Every other Secretary of State said, you know what, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to actually use the government system primarily. And if I need to supplement the government system at a moment in time, I may from time to time take requisite care and use a private email. But I'm certainly not going to take 100% of my business and put it on a private server, as Hillary did. Okay? So that's the big picture. This was an enormously risky thing to do. And therefore one must need to question why it was and what records do we have about the decision-making process to take this step. Who counseled them to do this? Who advised against it? Did the FBI, Mueller, at the time, have anything to say about, I hear the Secretary of State thinks she's going to have a private server. I better go send some of my best people. They say that's going to screw things up. They didn't do that. And then you have just Hillary Clinton's act doing this, and her gang of people. But then you think about, in addition, you have a conspiracy count, 18 U.S.C. 793G. So think about who's the most logical co-conspirator in this scheme. Huma Abedin, right? Everywhere with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Background never properly vetted. And let's think, I've got Rush Limbaugh, I got that kook Ortel, and I've got all these people asking, and Trump asking for the missing emails, and out of the blue, September 29th, 2016, the election is weeks away. The New York police find a laptop that is the property of who? Huma Abedin. And we say, you know what? We don't want to study this. I mean, this isn't something we need to leap on.
Too many crimes on there.
Right. And so you have these two, I don't see in the Horowitz report 18 U.S.C. 793 F and G logic that makes any sense to me whatsoever. Now, I may be missing something. I'm not a lawyer. I also don't see there's this regulation here, 5 Code of Federal Regulations, I won't give the number. An employee shall not use his public office for the private gain of friends, relatives, or persons with whom the employee is affiliated in a non-governmental capacity. Okay? Now, how do you operate the Clinton Foundation and the Obama Foundation with this rule? How do you do that? Right? You can't do that. I mean, it's just, there's so many obvious, we don't need to have, in my mind, you could create a complaint so long that it would be longer than GE's federal income tax return at 13 million pages or whatever that thing is.
Wow.
But think of it. Think about, in red here, how many people authorized the use of these secret servers and unsecure devices, right? Why was there no inspector general at the State Department?
Yeah, why is that?
And we supposedly have 17 different intelligence agencies. Why did nobody object? James Clapper, we know why, because he's that dumb. But there's 16 other guys, or women, would have looked at this and said, wait a minute. We're not talking about part of the U.S. government that has nothing to do with the rest of the world. This is everything to do with the rest of the world. This is if you're gonna get involved. If we go to back up the page, if we're gonna get involved, bugging anything, we want to bug the State Department and the people running it. And most importantly, somebody had a great piece. Who allowed Clinton the latitude to avoid signing the statements you're supposed to sign when you leave, saying that you understand that you've been handling confidential, top secret classified information. You understand, the rules that pertain to handling that properly, and you're not going to mishandle it after you leave. Where's that document?
She said, I don't know anything about that.
That was Bill.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next one. All right. We've talked about, this is from the report, page 294, 295, 299. This really leapt out the page at me. Coleman told us that he kept regularly, so it says it, he regularly took notes in a journal. Coleman's notes from October 4 contained the following entry. 1, Anthony Weiner. 2, we don't know what. 3, Weiner misspelled, both cases actually. Texting 15-year-old sexually explicit 9/26. That suggests to me that they found this on September 26th, not the 29th. Federal, I don't know what this means. Thousands of emails, Hillary Clinton and Foundation, crime against children. This is in the Horowitz report. Check it out for yourselves, page 294. Okay?
So wait a minute. Thousands emails, Hillary Clinton.
This is the case agent whoever got this Weiner Aberdeen laptop began to process it. By September 26th or 27th, the software program was having trouble processing all of the data. It says the examiner, this is some kind of special type of examiner, received the laptop on September 29th and made an exact copy of the laptop the same day. There were 675,000 emails on the laptop on September 29th. The first file he checked on was an image of a document marked sensitive but unclassified with the initials HRC written on it in a blue felt tip marker. The case agent recalled so we can't be looking at this because probably they didn't have the classification required, for the clearance required.
Right. Okay,
now this is a very important point. That I noticed this actually in the HRC dump. The 30,490 emails provided by the Clinton's attorneys contained no emails sent or received by Clinton during the first 2 months of her tenure. Okay, that's exactly when you want to see all these emails. You want to actually see them prior to that. You want to see them going back to, years pertaining to the Clinton Foundation. But to suggest you could do a thorough, deep dive into what was truly happening as Hillary Clinton, climbed on board the job of being Secretary of State without looking at the first 60 days. That's exactly when Valerie Jarrett's people in the IRS are going to be saying, you got a problem over here with this Clinton Foundation. We don't see any audits. We don't see any authority to do all this HIV/AIDS work. Nothing you've said is true in the MOU. You should have emails like that coming in and out, but they didn't bother to look for them, right? And that's just absurd to me. It is possible to get any email, any keystroke, going back to about mid-2004, what experts tell me, any keystroke in America back to 2004. That's exactly when this Clinton Foundation mushroomed into the scandal that it is. It was a scandal before 2004, but it became a gigantic one during 2004 as they were defrauding the National Archives and committing bank fraud and wire fraud and charity fraud and solicitation fraud, tax fraud, and you're not going to look at any of this stuff, right? Now, the other thing that's interesting here, we don't have to pull this up, but Devin Nunes was quoted in the last day or so saying that whistleblower, good FBI agents came to him in September of 2016. Right? So we can go to the next slide page. All right. Now this, we're almost done here, folks. This is a crucial timeline, and I found in my work in investing and now in investigating, the timelines are very interesting. If you lay something down day by day by day, you begin to see what was really happening. Okay, we know we've given you the link before that there was a meeting in which Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton met at Dianne Feinstein's Washington D.C. residence, and as a guess, there was some sort of deal where, people said to Hillary, "Look, McCain is never going to win. Democrats are going to win. Let's not have a floor fight. Let's, just give in," because she didn't want to give in, and there was all this stuff saying, her supporters were saying, no, Obama's an upstart. He has time. He can grow into the job. Hillary's older. Let her go first. Something happened by the 5th of June 2008 at or shortly after that meeting, where some sort of détente was negotiated. I think the records will show. Then there's this disparaging New Yorker magazine cover that we've had up in the past.
Oop.
That one. We don't need to bring it up, but this, I say, it's the magazine is dated the 21st of July, but New Yorker's come out before the date on the front, and somebody had found out about it by the 13th of July.
That's
and
with them dressed as terrorists?
Yeah, inside the White House, and Sidney Blumenthal, the dirty trickster, was supposedly behind it. So that,
sleazy,
and that most likely did not sit well, because remember the big issue for Obama that he was concerned about is would there be a floor fight at the Democratic National Convention, which was scheduled towards the end of August. On the 13th of August, we've talked about this in the past, the chairman of the Arkansas Democratic Party was executed in the party headquarters, and after he was executed, the cops chased down and shot and killed the person who murdered him. That person was replaced by David Pryor, who has been a longtime friend of the Clintons. He's older than the Clintons. He was on in the crucial fraud years when the fraud was escalated to a boil.
No priors.
Not only was he on the board, he became, I think, the first dean of the vaunted Clinton School of Public Service at the University of Arkansas. And we don't know how much he or Skip Rutherford, his successor, have been paid, because that information has not yet been disclosed, and it needs to be disclosed. But anyway, the Clintons back off, Obama gets elected, and on the 16th of November 2008, Valerie Jarrett signs this ridiculous memorandum of understanding that's just chock-a-block full with lies. We've been over it before. Check the link if you want to see what we're talking about. The next day, the Clinton Foundation fails to file its audit and its return on time. The final filing deadline in 2008 was the 17th of November. Why did they fail to file it then? Because Hillary needed to gotten across the line and confirmed in the Senate. And had they done this lawfully, I hope you're listening, FBI, had they done this lawfully, they would have had to disclose the epic fraud up at Chai, where Ira Magaziner and Anil Soni had to admit that $23 million had disappeared. And then the Clinton solution was, well, we'll just cover that up. We've got a slush fund over here. We'll put the missing money. We'll make that missing money no longer missing. And we'll just keep going. And then we leave this off, but March 31st, 2008, the Clinton Foundation had found out, hey, your biggest piece of business, biggest operation, Chai, it's not happening. Its license to, its authority to operate in Massachusetts was involuntarily, permanently revoked. These are material facts that should have been in the audit, which might explain why the audit wasn't issued by the final filing deadline. And this is the kind of stuff, you don't put out this absurd, bouncy MOU that says we're saving the world and raising billions, the Clinton this and the Clinton that. It's all a pack of lies. And they missed the deadline for filing. Then what happened? I don't know the date yet, but the FBI would know, unless Mueller has put special, sauce on the papers. Barack Obama was investigated by Mueller's FBI investigators over the Blagojevich matter, That was the attempted sale by Blagojevich and his people, or by people around Blagojevich, to sell the rights to take Barack Obama's Senate seat. Okay, that to me is something
Crazy.
I'd really want to know about.
Yeah.
And then you look here on the 12th of December 2008, the notorious, remember anything bad is in red. You know, there's that rap star, I think he was killed, Notorious B.I.G.
Yep.
Notorious BKD has yet another false and misleading, in quotes, audit is rendered on the 12th of December 2008. Right? Instead of providing that to the New York State regulators and other regulators, on the 15th of December, the Clinton Foundation's agents send across state lines using the mail a letter saying, we can't give you our filing for 2007. Our auditors have not completed their work, even though they completed the work 3 days prior. I mean, that's like, gotcha, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's across state lines. They did it in, I believe they did it in New York. I found them doing it in California, and they did it in Michigan. They may have done it in other states, the same letter.
Isn't this just lying to regulators, that 18 USC 1001?
That getting good, yeah. I think 18 USC 1001 might be false statements, and there's another one to regulate.
So isn't that the same thing?
It is. Oh, but this is how they roll. Then, by the 13th of January 2009, the Clinton, in this testimony, we provided a link to the actual lengthy question and answer period of Hillary Clinton, graciously accepting praise for her great work and her husband's great work at the Clinton Foundation, brushing away any concerns about possible conflicts of interest. Lie after lie after lie. Memorialized for us Tuesday, January 13th, 2009. I mean, it's very lengthy. I don't know how many pages this thing is, but read it and weep, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hillary Clinton lying her ass off to and Barack Obama, letting her do it. Here we go. The Clinton Foundation worked in good faith to construct a more complex, bullshit, frankly. No part of this is true, right? And real lawyers, I mean, you contrast, you got a problem, Mueller has a problem with Manafort. So what do?
Throw him in jail.
No, before that, they raid his house at like 4 o'clock in the morning and then dry clean his house, right? Did they ever do that to the Clintons? Or any part of the Clinton Foundation? Maybe, but we don't know about it yet.
Did they?
I don't think so. Go back into the slide itself, though. So, on the very same day that Hillary Clinton is lying her ass off to her colleagues in the Senate, I thought it was a club where you're supposed to comport well with your colleagues. She's lying her ass off. Barack is letting her do it for some inexplicable reason as yet. They had already set up this Clinton email server in 2008 on a date we don't yet know exactly when, and we don't know what email system they were using before that, but Hillary Clinton gets assigned one of her email addresses the very day that she's lying her ass off and surviving the nomination vote in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, okay? And then former Senator Barack Obama gets sworn in, and if you go down here, and on the 21st, Hillary is confirmed as U.S. Secretary of State. So why did Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and the Obama team, and Bob Bauer would know about this, and Axelrod and others, why were they so willing to let the Clintons have Hillary as Secretary of State, have Eric Holder as Attorney General, have all these, allies in key positions? Mm-hmm. What did the Clintons have on the Obamas? And that, until the FBI tells us what that is, we're not going to know the full story. So if we go to the next page, and we're going to be, I know your goal here, we're going to hit your goal right in the middle, just so you know. All right. People are finally beginning to appreciate that Bob Mueller has not one conflict of interest. He has a long list of conflicts of interest that have not been thought through properly. And I have always been told that a standard that operates or is supposed to operate in the Department of Justice is not simply that you don't break the law, because it's kind of screws things up if you're trying to put people in jail for breaking the law, that you start doing that yourself. The higher standards, you're supposed to avoid the appearance of impropriety. How could somebody so deeply implicated, in my view, and I don't use that as a legal term, just how could Bob Mueller, so involved in so many questionable investigations that did not find obvious frauds involving the Clintons and their allies, how could this person be not only on a list to be special counsel, but how could such a person who's supposed to be upstanding accept the offer? It doesn't make any sense. It was a setup from the start, and I think the people, Donald Trump, if you're listening, your people, you need to go back and see who it was who recommended Rod Rosenstein, how he got to be the right under Sessions, who was pushing Sessions, and who was behind the drive to get this guy.
Who selected him? How does that process work?
Yeah, well, there's got to be records.
Showed up?
No, there got to be records. And then who gave this man Mueller latitude to set up, put anybody on his team that he wanted, ending up with the 13 angry Dems? How come nobody noticed these problems? It's not like you'd sit there and say, I got this very, hot button set of issues here. Now Mueller's going to run it. How come nobody didn't check in each week and say, Bob, you're supposed to do this and you're doing that? How come nobody tried to bring it back to here? Ray, there's this article in American Thinker is by, I can't pronounce his name, I think it's Sobieski maybe. Our friend Sidney Powell has written a book, License to Lie. She has grave concerns about Ray. And I think, if Donald Trump expressed recently his hope and confidence in Christopher Wray, Ray's going to be testifying before Congress this week. He's got a lot of explaining to do here. A lot of explaining to do. Why, I've been very patient. I imagine that it takes the FBI and the Department of Justice time to put this Clinton Foundation, these indictments together. Maybe there are sealed indictments already, and maybe they're waiting for the opportune time to drop this all. But Christopher Wray has got a lot of explaining to do, and he does not deserve deference. I mean, this under Mueller, and then under Comey, the FBI, the senior management of the FBI took that institution directly into the toilet, and that toilet needs to be cleaned up. The people who were prepared to take a fine institution into the toilet need to be sent into the jail where they belong for a long period of time, and there need to be some Mr. and Mrs. Cleans running the FBI and the Department of Justice, top to bottom, spring, summer cleaning.
Ray was involved in the Enron thing, and they never really did anything there. Kenneth Lay had a heart attack, right? I mean,
well, they did secure certain convictions, but I would note to the audience that, and I will be writing about this, that the magnitude of the Enron fraud is considerably smaller than the Clinton Foundation fraud.
Wow.
When you think about its many contras. So
that's crazy.
One of the complaints that Democrats and Republicans have, and journalists of course have, is that there is a penchant in the government to A, to have too many classified documents, and then B, when you hand the document out, to have it filled with redactions, blacked out place, so you can't make head or tails of the document.
Pointless document.
Well, so the point is that the power to redact is a power that should be given sparingly. And the people having that power, their motives need to be called into question, because it seems as if there's been a long-standing pattern and practice of government excess, dare I say even fraud and illegality, and that needs to be exposed to sunlight. Now, Donald Trump he has the highest, I believe, redaction power. He can look at this and say, you know what, full boat, I want it all out in public. Let the chips fall where they may. And maybe he should be doing that sooner rather than later. But this is your friend, and I'd like to meet her, but Cheryl Atkinson saying that the senators are now going to say, now wait a minute, why is the FBI so heavy-handed in the way they have been redacting and keeping information back from the legislative oversight branches of our government? So if you go back into the slide, again, we don't need to pull up this link, Jason, because I want to keep us to a schedule, but Donald Trump has announced that he's going to be in Duluth, Minnesota next week. There was one original venue selected, but the demand is so great, and let's think about this, in Minnesota, which is not historically a Republican state, I think you're going to see Donald Trump, he's got a very straightforward approach. I've been in the saddle long enough. I'm beginning to have accomplishments. I'm going to crisscross this country. I don't care what fake yapper has to say. I don't care what Wolf Blitzer has to say. And these talking heads of, failing New York Times and elsewhere. I'm going to go directly out to the public. I'm going to express myself directly to the American public and the world, and let's see what the voters think of it. I don't need to give an exclusive interview to Maggie Conflicted Haberman at the New York Times. I can go out to a vast audience in real time and sell myself very effectively, as I think the way he's thinking. And Corey Lewandowski, I think, wrote the book with David Bossie, Let Trump Be Trump, and on this one, let him go. Let him sell this across the country. Now, offsetting this enthusiasm that I see out of the Horowitz report, let's pull up the zero hedge thing. This is something that probably will mean little to many in the audience, but in simplistic terms, interest rates on borrowings over, let's say, a month out, a year out, normally are lower than interest rates on longer borrowings. The longer you allow somebody to borrow money for you, the higher the likelihood they default. When you see the annualized interest rate on a short-term loan go up above the long-term rate, that means there's a crisis brewing. And this article is claiming that a big bank, my brother does work there, full disclosure, that the global bond curve just went from, should be short is underneath long, and it's now short is above long. That is something that should worry a lot of people and will worry a lot of people. So I think we're in this moment where the work that Donald Trump is doing, disrupting both the U.S. economy, the U.S. bureaucracies, and multilateral messes around the world, will pay dividends in the U.S., but it's going to hurt the emerging markets, it's going to hurt Europe, and investors should be very, in my view, cautious. And it's not a time to take leveraged bets and buy 60 price earnings, highly valued stocks. You remember last week we had that picture of Frau Merkel staring down, looking down at Donald Trump, and all the globalists were saying, she's showing him. And
German
she may be out. She may be out. There's a Bavarian new minister in Germany who is challenging Merkel on her immigration policies, her lax immigration policies. At the same moment, there are more and more incidents across Europe of these migrants who came in without being vetted properly, committing horrific crimes. And there is actually a suggestion in responsible publications that the coalition that has Merkel as head of Germany may break up, and she may actually be out quickly, which would be very interesting if that happened.
Yeah.
So, not for her, of course, but...
Well, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah. Now, this is a shameless promote for a new thing that I did my first piece for. This is an interesting operation that called the Boston Broadside, that is a new sort of magazine that goes across, it's a conservative magazine that is marketed in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New England. And I wrote this piece. It took a while for it to actually get published, but I wrote it. We talked about it a little bit, the Hillary Clinton's Harvard and Yale Roadshow. But I and Jason, I think, are going to be raising the temperature against these globalist-oriented, financially endowed, rich educational charities that are actually, seem to me to be in the business of promoting corrupt globalism and crony capitalism. And taking a step back, Harvard and Yale were both founded well before there was an income tax, but they were each supposed to be real charities. They're not supposed to be money spinners. And you look at the books today, which you can do, they're money spinners. You look at the professional, the law schools, the business schools, the medical schools, they're coining money.
I mean, even just T-shirts of Harvard probably.
And hats, not to
Right.
mention hats. But anyway, this is, I think it's time, it is past time to go back and say, now wait a minute, if these universities are promoting globalism that actually harms 80% of the country and is costing, our national prestige, is costing America in many ways, why should these institutions that are rich, very rich, get tax deductions, not simply from federal taxes, but from state and local taxes. And that's a debate that I'm prepared to have and join. And I suspect people across the spectrum, progressives and conservatives, are going to look at this and say, yeah, actually, unless Harvard and Yale start teaching a lot more people, their class sizes haven't grown that much, their endowments have mushroomed, professor salaries have gone up, president salaries have gone up, all these institutes are making a lot of money for themselves. Then they're consulting on the side, creating venture capital deals on the side. That doesn't sound to me like charity. That sounds to me like charity Clinton style, right? So if we just give a little shout out to Utrice, I had a lot of fun. I'm very proud actually of this report that we did. And I took questions at the end of it. There was some crank who tried to claim that, to chastise Utrice for having a white supremacist on her show, namely me. Now, I'm pretty far away from being a white supremacist, let's just say. But the kind of guff that you took, and Utrice and I basically smacked that guy down pretty hard. Other than that, we had great questions. I enjoy taking questions. This is a progressive audience. It's not my natural audience. I've been on this show, thank you, Utrice, 50 to 100 times.
Wow.
I'll be on again this week, probably several times. And Utrice is a wonderful human being, looks at life through a different prism than I do. But on charity fraud, on Clinton excesses, on the Obamas, we agree. Now, this is interesting, this, the EU thing. It's this one here. So here's Trump being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now that's,
Really?
Yeah, supposedly.
So now he's in the same category as Robert David Steele.
Well, it's interesting because what's going on here is Norway is concerned about Russia's flexing its muscles, and now Norway's traditionally been a neutral country and is now becoming more of a NATO allied country. I think it may be in NATO at this point, I'm not sure. But they're asking for more U.S. activity in Norway. They're sending this positive vibe out saying that Norwegian politicians are considering Donald Trump for the Peace Prize. And whether he gets it or not should depend on whether there are successes coming out of the North Korean thing. And early returns suggest some that maybe they haven't really destroyed these missile sites quite yet. And there's conflicting signals. We shouldn't be taking victory laps. But I think this is encouraging, especially when you see that Norway gave so much money to the Clinton frauds, and Norway and her taxpayers need to get that money back. They need to get on the bandwagon. They need to tell us what was really happening. They need to explain why they didn't see these frauds. And then the good news is you can get some money back. Now, we'll close then on another Thomas Paine thing. He says IG 2.0. I think he means 3.0 because the McCabe report is 1. The one we saw is 2. And the third one, now, these reports are going to build on one another. That McCabe is already in for criminal referral. We don't know how many other criminal referrals there should be. I think Comey definitely should be, based on what I've seen. Strzok, Page, a lot of people, Kadzik, these other people. But as that process continues, and as these reports build on themselves, and as Congress gets, the missing text messages, which, until the second report was released, Congress hadn't seen some of these text messages. As they begin to go back with their staffs and say, now wait a minute, you've been stiff-arming us for all this time, you were purposely trying to game this, to get it through the election, we want to see this stuff yesterday. Nunes and Gowdy and others are pounding the table, we are going to see the stuff that's been hidden, and then it's not only that we're going to see the stuff, we're going to be able to say, now we understand why you were hiding it, we understand your intent and your motive. So I've come in 6 minutes underneath your goal.
Wonderful.
And I would say, the strongest piece, an encouragement, ye of little faith, take heart here on this Father's Day. There is an open FBI investigation. It's confirmed. We suspected it was. It's confirmed in spades in this document, the second Inspector General report. And that means that the great line agents who've been on this case for a long time are in a position to build the forget what this acting attorney general in New York did with Trump. The indictment that could come out here, and maybe there is already, maybe there already are sealed indictments.
Against who?
Against all the trustees, the senior executives, major donors.
So Bill, Hillary.
Absolutely, and the rich trustees, the Haim Saban and his wife, Cheryl Saban, the Hadil, the name will come to me, the daughter of the billionaire, the many, many names, Terry McAuliffe, BKD, the accounting firm, individuals at the accounting firm.
Lock them all up.
Pile drive them.
It's too many crimes to look at.
I know. Well, maybe put them in a private prison. But this has been a big week.
Yeah.
A lot has happened. I expect a lot more will happen. We'll probably get back together on Wednesday and update people.
You said something that I found so implausible, but it happened. They canceled the summer recess for Congress, and they're going to work on through. That's serious.
Well, we'll see. There's a lot could go wrong. A lot has gone wrong for 28 years, 30 years, principally involving many of these people. And we left the Bushes off because the Republican.
You try to keep it to Dems.
Exactly, in this one. But happy Father's Day to the audience. I like to say, for me, every day is Father's Day. But this is a special day, and it's a good day to go out and see your father, at least honor your father. And I bet you many people are already doing that. So we'll let you get back to that.
Yeah.
And
so we'll be back on Wednesday, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Remind everyone that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored resource. I do need your sponsorship to continue. You can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a monthly sponsor, or make a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. Charles, tomorrow we'll be back to live streaming on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel. So hopefully our viewership will be way back up on Wednesday when you continue to close in.
I look forward to that, Jason.
I'll see you then.
All right.
Thanks for watching, everybody.